All right, welcome back to the Zach Clark Show. And today, it's one of the greatest family recovery stories I've personally been attached to or been a witness to. We have Dad, Steve D'Antonio Sr., who had an amazing 30-year career on Wall Street working for Morgan Stanley. And then when son Steve started to kind of go through his struggles with substance abuse, launched full-time into learning about addiction recovery and being a parent, and has since worked for Shatterproof and studied addiction through a fellowship at Harvard, and most recently is a really a parent peer advocate, and it's his mission to kind of, I think, make parents not feel alone in this journey. And then I have his son Steve Jr., Stevie D for purposes of this episode, who is a good friend of mine, works for us as Release as our program director here in New York City, and started trying to get sober at 16, 17?
Yeah, 17.
So 17 years old. Mm-hmm. Thanks for being here, guys.
Happy to be here. Good to see you.
It's good to be here.
You guys ready to do this?
Yeah, let's do it.
A father and a son talking about recovery. So, Stevie D, I want to start because whenever I talk about my story, you know, the Clark family, there was the white picket fence and then everything that happened behind it.
Yeah.
So for you, growing up in Garden City, you're the youngest of 5.
Yep.
14, 15, like what was your experience growing up in the D'Antonio home, or what were you feeling?
Yeah, I mean, you know, it was interesting. I didn't know anything different, right? I mean, having 5 kids, not everybody has that experience. Being the youngest of 5 kids, not a lot of people have that experience. I also had, 17 first cousins who grew up in my hometown, all went to the same high school. So it was like...
Garden City legends.
Yeah, and, you know, when you're 14 trying to walk down the block with a 12-pack in your hand, you're going to run into somebody who knows you just from the last name, D'Antonio, right? And so for me, it was really hard to hide. I walked into every classroom and, you know, the first comment from the teacher was another D'Antonio, right? And so with that, I think there came expectations, a really successful family, both in the classroom and on the sports field.
Your 4 other siblings are what? What are the colleges?
The oldest one was the valedictorian of our high school, played college baseball at Dartmouth. There's twins. Johnny went to Dartmouth. Katie went to Hamilton College, played lacrosse there. And then Kevin he went to Syracuse University. So,
and you're bringing up the rear.
And
saving the best for last.
Yeah, the black sheep coming in last, yeah, at the time being.
Hardly.
And hardly now, but yeah, there was a lot of pressure, a lot of unspoken pressure, a lot of pressure that I was putting on myself. And, you know, there were some big expectations out there for me.
And your dad, what was your perception of your dad growing up? Like, what did you think of Steve here? Like, give me the real.
Okay. I think hero for a long time, right? I mean, like when I was growing up and he came home from work, like I was waiting there with baseball pants on, ready to go outside and have a catch, and like wanted to spend a lot of time with him. And he would walk in, put the briefcase down, and like before he even changed out of his clothes, we were throwing the baseball around. And you know, I think when I went into like middle school and high school, like that was where I had a little bit of like fierce independence, pushing back, wanted to go my own path, really like just a lot of fear about not measuring up. And so, you know, he had a lot of expectations, and that was really like the first, like 13, 14 was the first time like our heads started to butt together a little bit.
Steve.
Yes, sir.
Raising 5 kids in Garden City. I've gotten to know you. I know what you stand for. You are leading a pretty successful career. What was your experience? What were you trying to accomplish as a father prior to learning of any of Steve's struggles? And what was that like?
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to be there for my kids. So, you know, I did the Wall Street thing different than most people. You know, I was home for every game. I went to every parent-teacher conference. My kids were priority 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But Stevie's right. You know, like every year I would sit each one of them down and we'd have our little chat before the school year started about how important school is, how important sports are, Also, I would talk about how we have addiction in both sides of the family. That didn't help very much, apparently. But, the reality was that I felt like my role was to be authoritative, not authoritarian. And, essentially give them a good role model, give them high expectations, and then support them. Support them in whatever they were doing. And it worked out for the first 4, for sure. That model definitely worked. For Stevie, dealing with what he was dealing with, not so much. It wasn't the right model.
So fair to say, kind of like type A, I'm going to put this in front of you. If we do it this way, we're going to have a pretty good outcome and we're all going to be healthy and happy. Is that kind of what your mindset was, or?
Yeah, type AAA,
Okay.
for sure.
AAA.
No doubt about it. And really high strung, high energy, optimistic. I wasn't pounding my kids. I wasn't negative on my kids ever. But I was just,
Is that true?
Yeah, you tried your best not to be negative, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was definitely a support, like a cheerleader kind of guy, kind of dad. And, to the best I could. But I had high expectations, and I think that the thing was, if things started going off the rails, I didn't really know what to do. So Stevie's, one of his older brothers, Kevin, he had a couple little dips and a little turns in there that were challenging. And I don't think I handled them particularly well. Like, I was really good at handling kids that, I'm going to do my homework. I'm going to work hard for sports. And I get the program and I'm on it, right? But if it was different than that, it was harder for me, to be honest.
Yeah. All right, so Stevie D, when's your first Natural Light, Coors Light, whatever, beer, cocktail, like when is your first moment of rebellion where you say, like, I'm gonna drink, and then what happens from there? Because your dad is clearly outlining like this life that has been built, and here you come.
Yeah. 14, just turned 14, summer going into freshman year. Jungle juice,
Okay.
big cooler of a lot of different ingredients in there. Hanging out with older kids, and it was like.
And are these cousins or brothers, or you're just kind of tagging along?
Yeah,
with
like brothers, friends, and like it
Yeah.
was like I would go to the park every day in the summer, and like these were the guys who worked there, right? And so it was the last day of the summer, and like they have the jungle juice cooler in the back, and go up to one guy, can I get a cup? He sneaks me a cup. Go up to a different guy, can I get a cup? He gets me one. And so like I had the connections with them because I had older siblings who were friends with them, and so like it was really easy for me right away to just start like manipulating and trying to get what I could get my hands on, and it was, I chased that feeling for a long time. I mean, it was like no longer remembered that I had braces, wasn't worried about the peach fuzz on my face, wasn't worried about being funny. Like it was just, I felt like me, and I know that that's a lot of people's experience. And right away, alcohol just kind of like became my identity of where are we going to do it, how are we going to get it, and how much can we do.
So that's leading into freshman year.
Yeah.
And Steve, when do you finally, or is it immediately, or when do you learn that Steve's drinking?
That's the first I've heard of that.
Okay.
So
Nice
that'll
job,
give you an
20,
idea.
yeah, nice,
I mean,
nice.
we felt like we were on it kind of parents, but as I've gotten older and they start telling me stuff, all 5 of them, I realize, we weren't as on it as we thought we were. And I think most parents kind of have that experience. But really, it was when he OD'd, and I think it was 9th grade. You had, I forget what the drink was. It was like twice the alcohol content.
Four Loko.
Four Loko.
Give me the story.
Yeah.
Stevie.
Okay, so that, I mean, straight to the hospital. That's when we realized.
Yeah.
Freshman year.
Freshman year, we're beginning like
Fuck.
something that's like serious.
I was 14. I had been drinking every Friday and Saturday. There were a couple moments where it was like, have you been drinking? And me immediately being like,
No fucking way.
go get the breathalyzer. I haven't been drinking. I don't care what you say. Like, I'm me. How could you not believe me? All that. December 17th, 2011. I remember the day. Bad Christmas shortly after that. I was out with friends, and we...
Cold.
Yeah. And it was the afternoon. It was 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And a girl had some Four Locos, and she was like, I don't want these. Do you guys want them? And so drank one,
Ground score.
had a tall boy shortly afterwards, and that's when everybody else stopped. And then a buddy of mine was like, I actually don't want mine. And so I took that, and I drank the whole thing in one sip. And I woke up in the hospital. I mean, I don't know how many hours later it was, but I had like a 0.39 blood alcohol content.
The Four Loko. I mean, the Four Loko. Shout out Four Loko. I mean, everyone's got a Four Loko story, right? I mean, this
Yeah.
stuff is like, I don't know how it was ever legal.
That was the drug of choice of mine in rehab. That was what I identified with, Four
Four
Loko.
Loko.
Yeah, it was cheap and it was effective.
So dad, freshman. He's freshman in high. I mean,
14.
He gets, I think.
Have you hit
brought
puberty? I mean,
home.
you're not,
I
like-
don't even remember.
My friends were really worried. Like I was face down in the dirt, like couldn't move. Was,
Someone
like,
called.
and they called my siblings, Johnny and
Good for them.
Katie, and they were home from college break because I was the only kid in the house at that time. I mean, it was like all four of my siblings were either in college or out of the house. So it was just me. So you go from being the youngest of five to like, you know, you're fighting for attention. And not that they didn't want to give us attention. It's just there's a lot of sports. There's a lot of different things going on. And like all of a sudden, right when you don't want anyone to look at you when you're a freshman in college, I mean, when you're a freshman in high school, everybody's gone. And it's just me. So my friends called my siblings. They came. I mean, there's a couple like funny stories about that now that I'm
Did you have
okay
clothes
and
on?
recovered. My sister walked into the backyard and she said, Stevie, are you okay? And I said, is that Andre? And I don't even know who Andre is. You know, like, I mean, that was the state I was in. They, I think they drove me to the hospital and I was just head out of the window throwing up everywhere and woke up at like midnight.
and you get the call from.
So I don't even remember whether we brought you. I think we brought you
Yeah.
straight to the hospital. And I mean, obviously it scared the shit out of me when he blew like 0.39. Like that's, and then we made them test for drugs. And then you got this weird thing at the hospital. Well, we can't tell you whether or not, you know, he's on drugs because of HIPAA and all this stuff. And then some nurse kind of winked at me and said he's good. So I was like, okay. But with our, you know, with our family, like his older brother, who was the valedictorian, he had one of these blowouts where he drank vodka for the first time and it blew his doors off. And so, you know, on the first one, of course, we grounded him for, you know, I think we said for the rest of your life, but it was probably 3 months kind of thing. And,
But
you know,
do you remember the conversation the next morning? Like, do you sit him down and say, like, you're trouble, you're
remember it.
grounded? Or is it like, hey, what's going, like, was there?
no, yeah, I remember basically saying, look, that's dangerous, number one. Number two, we have this issue in the family. And, you know, I think I said to you, I want you to write us a letter.
Yeah.
And you did write a letter on, you know, drinking and, you know, how dangerous it is and what you're going to do about it. So he writes this really great letter.
It was no TV, no phone, no outside, no
Yeah.
friends. Go straight to school, come straight home till you write the letter. And it took me 6 weeks to write it.
Yeah, it
And
did.
finally I had enough and I wrote it.
So
But
you were,
I mean, I was
like,
that
at
stubborn.
that point, you were like rebelling and you kept
Oh,
your,
yeah. I want the letter. I want you to know how serious what you did, how close to the edge that really was, and how you're going to remediate it. Like, what, you know, what's going to change. And so that was the start, right? And boy, you wrote, I think I still have the letter somewhere.
I'm sure.
We might
It was
need to get the letter.
classic. I mean, when Stevie wants to turn on the charm, as you know, he can spin
He's
a
the
yarn.
best of all
and
time.
we bought the whole thing. And so after he wrote it, I think we said 3 months, whatever, and we let him out soon after we got the letter. And
So this is freshman year.
Freshman
you have
year.
this blowout. When's the next time you drink CBD after?
February of freshman year, caught immediately.
So you drink December 11th.
Yeah.
3 months you're kind of on, or 2 months you're on house arrest.
Yep.
It sounds
Yep.
like, and then you get out and already.
Full flask of vodka, one go, throwing up in a you know, in my buddy's mom's
second time-
bowl. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I hadn't drank in 2 months and it was like, let's catch up. I mean, that was the mindset, right? I mean, like, you can picture being 14, alcohol being your identity, being your friend group's identity, and you have to sit on the sidelines for 2 months and listen every day at the lunch table. Where are we going? What are we getting? How are we going to get it? And, you know, as soon as the opportunity was there, I never missed. And I wanted to take it to the highest level that I could without getting caught.
So you drink the flask, hospital again? Is it?
No.
No.
no, that was in next year because we did get the hospital again.
Yeah.
for sure.
I mean, the stat, like when I'm like in a 12-step meeting, like the stats is 4 years of drinking, 4 hospitalizations, a psychiatric unit, and a treatment center by 17. And that doesn't include the drinking and driving, the drinking at school, the drinking every day. Cops called on me in my own house. I mean, like it was.
And do you remember feeling like, and I don't want to massage this in any way. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but do you remember, were you mad at your parents? Did you just want to party? Like, what was the feeling you had towards the family? Like, were you...
I think, I mean, you could probably talk about this a lot, but like I was really pent up emotionally. And then when I got to that level of like being under the influence and we were combative, like those were the first words out of my mouth was, this is the perfect family. I don't fit in. I'm never going to be good enough. And my parents would just sit there and be like, where is this coming from? Like,
Yeah, there was actually a moment where he was shit-faced. He went out in front of our house, and you were screaming to all the neighbors, this is such bullshit. You guys think you have the greatest family. It's total bullshit. I want everybody to know his fucking family sucks.
You're a legend, bro.
It was like 15 or 16.
Yeah.
And look, I mean,
But did that kick up some fear in you? Like,
no, I didn't care what the neighbors thought.
God.
I couldn't give a shit what the neighbors thought. I was just worried about him. Like, I know who my neighbors are. You know, I know that we're not a shitty family. I know, you know, so I have a little bit of confidence that the 15-year-old hasn't nailed it, you know, who's shit-faced and who's pissed off at us, right? So we're good there. But it was an outburst. I mean, it was loud. And, you know, look, as I look back on it now, he was really hurting on a lot of levels, you know? And, you know, that expectation thing that I was probably too tough on him around expectations. And, you know, following his siblings, you know, I can only imagine it sucked, you know, like they did really well. And, you know, they covered all the bases. Like Katie was like 6-time state champion in lacrosse and field hockey and sports and captain of her college team. And, you know, Johnny is like voted best all around. So he's got like
Steve's just got a really bad left-handed golf swing.
Yeah. No, but I mean, but I look at Stevie and I'm like, this kid's got unbelievable upside. He's handsome. He's funny as shit. His siblings love him. His siblings' friends love him, but he doesn't see it. You know, so I feel like the mission is I got to get him to see, you know, that he's a great kid and that, you know, I wasn't a valedictorian. His mother wasn't a valedictorian. Like, who gives a shit? Like, you know, it was great that he did it, but that's not the expectation. And in fact, I think I called a family meeting after he got it, and I put everybody in the kitchen. I said, that's not the expectation. No one in the family, extended family, my brother who went to Princeton and got his PhD, he never did it. No one ever did it. That's not the expectation. But the expectation is that you're going to try hard in school and you're going to do well, but that's not the expectation because that's too hard. It's too elusive. But he really felt it deep down and rebelled against it in a huge way.
At what point do you, Steve, have the thought, and maybe you never have this thought, but I'm pretty good at my job on Wall Street. I've raised a pretty badass family, but I don't actually know what I'm doing here. Like when does that thought, my hard work is not going to solve this issue?
Yeah, that happened Stevie's junior winter when the whole suicidality thing started to creep in. He was really depressed because he was pounding alcohol in a heavy way. And, you know, his girlfriend, he was texting his girlfriend, you know, things that were, you know, I'm going to kill myself. We actually went on a trip. He was going skiing with his cousins. And so we went on a trip to Costa Rica. I get a text from his sister, hey, he's talking about all that craziness again. We turned around and went straight home. And they were in Vermont, and we just camped out at a hotel in Hanover, New Hampshire, because we needed to be close, right? We didn't want to, like, surprise him and bring him home. but we wanted to be close because we were scared shitless. So we sent him to a psychiatrist. The guy's like,
That's
he's
the
fine.
I want to stop there for
Yeah.
one second because that's the chaos that like
Oh.
every parent at some point who's dealing with a son or a daughter. I mean, you
It's
turn
chaos.
him around from a trip from Costa Rica to go to a hotel in Vermont and camp out just so in the event something happens,
We're there.
you're there to answer the bell. I mean,
Yeah.
that's like
No, but that's... there
because
was
you're,
no
but you're
other-
terrified
there
to
was
just
no
go in
other
the
answer
house.
because I was talking to his aunt, who's my sister, and I'm like, what do you think? What's the right move? She goes, don't come and pull him out because he's going to be furious. I got it. I'm going to be watching him closely. And I said, okay, but we got to be close. And so we literally, we checked in and checked out on the same, within an hour of this hotel, and then tried to find a flight, and we got home. And then we drove up to New Hampshire in a freaking blizzard.
I didn't know this story.
I know.
you didn't even know they were there.
I didn't know you were in Hanover.
And then, yeah, and then what we did was we had an intervention lined up where when they got home, we were going to immediately take him to the emergency room at Northwell. I had my brother camped out outside in case he tried to run, so that we were going to like.
And there's no professional involved in any of this. Like this is you.
Well, no, we had a psychiatrist who
Okay.
said no, he's fine, but we needed to get him again to the emergency.
But you were
room.
going to figure it out, right?
Yeah, no chance.
But no, I mean that's the thought, right?
No.
For dads, like
I knew I was out of my league. I knew I was like, this was too crazy. And then we took him to the hospital. He's furious. I don't know what he said to the doctors, but they're like, he's fine. Right? And then probably 2 weeks later
Yeah.
was the big event when he was at a party. He
I
got,
want him to tell the event.
yeah, you tell the event and then I'll tell our side.
Yeah.
It
So
was-
at this point, you're junior in
I'm a
high
junior-
school.
I'm a
You
junior in
know
high
that you're
school.
figured out. Like you know your parents know you're.
I didn't know. I starting in that January. So like there were a lot of big events that happened in high school, but it was like November of that year, junior year. Cops are called on me in my house because I was like, that was the event. My dad was like, I'm yelling outside. I don't
Yeah.
care who knows, all that. My parents put me really for the first time of like, you can't drink alcohol. You can go see your friends, you can go out, you can do your thing, but you can't drink alcohol until the new year, 6 weeks. That Christmas, I blacked out so hard that I almost canceled our family trip the next day. I mean, like, you were in my room at 4 a.m. waking me up to go to the flight, and I, like,
He put his shirt on backwards.
put my sweatpants on my head, right? And so right then in January is where there was a couple different things that happened. Like, there were a couple days off from school. There were some snow days. And, like, before I knew it, I had drank, like, 5 out of 7 days of the week. And I was like, I'm actually feeling, like, as much as I'm hurting internally, this is helping me in that moment. And so that was really the switch, January of my junior year, where I started drinking every day for like 3 months. And so that February, I was on a trip with cousins skiing. I didn't know the Hanover, New Hampshire story. I remember coming home from Vermont and planning to go out to a party that night, and all of a sudden there's an intervention waiting for me. So I walked into the hospital, told them what they wanted to hear, which was that I was fine. I was just upset about a breakup or something like that. And a couple weeks later, it's St. Patrick's Day of my junior year of high school. Start drinking at probably 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I had 3 Four Locos that day.
The Four Loco King.
A couple, yeah, Four Loco King. A couple of beers on top of it. I mean, this is over a longer period of a longer stretch of time, but you know, I'm in a party. I am pretty close to being blacked out, and I get kicked out of the party for just being a loose cannon. Yeah. And so I'm walking home from that party, and I'm just, I mean, the saying is like sick and tired.
Garden City?
What?
In Garden City?
In Garden City,
Yeah.
yep. And there's a railroad track that runs through my town. And so this house where the party was happened to be right near there. And so my feet just carried me, you know, like I was voting with my feet. Like my brain was turned off, and it was just, they were carrying me over there. And before I knew it, I was standing on the railroad tracks of my hometown at 10:30 at night on a Saturday by myself, waiting for the train to come to end my life. And by some miracle, a girl in my grade who I was friends with but not particularly that close with at that time happened to be walking across the platform as a shortcut to her house, and she saw what was happening as the train was coming, and I was too drunk to get up, and she pulled me off the tracks.
Oh my God.
And I mean, I don't really remember that much, but like, I got home and just got honest, really. Like, it was terrified. And they took me right to the hospital. I got assessed, and before you know it, I'm like 16 years old, sitting in a psych ward. You know, I'm like an AP student, an honor student, a captain of a sports team, girlfriend, friends. Like, on paper, my life looked one way, and it looked pretty good. And I was like this person who tried to be confident and outgoing, and then at home, I was a tornado. And that was the side that they saw.
I want to stop. What are you feeling hearing him say that? Like, tell that story.
I'm almost crying because it was brutal. That he stumbled into the house, and we're like, what is going on? Tell us. And when he told us, it scared the living shit out of us, honestly, because, you know, we heard from the emergency room, we heard from the psychiatrist, yeah, he's not suicidal. And now we're hearing that by the grace of God, he survived because of pure luck. And we did throw him in the car, and, you know, he did not want to go to the psychiatric unit. And we're like, we don't care. This is what you're doing. And he, for a week, we went every day to see him multiple times a day, and he was furious that he was in there.
17 years old in a lockdown ward.
16, yeah.
16.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
This is my junior year of high school.
Yeah.
And how, like, when you think back, like, did you ever have a sober thought that you wanted to end your life, or was this typically...
No, I mean, yeah, I was struggling all the time, and like
Yeah.
that was my main coping mechanism. And then once I got to that level with drinking, like that's when the thoughts really started to come in, and like that's when I felt like I had the liquid courage to actually take action. I don't think I would have done it sober. I think I could have really harmed myself under the influence.
I'm so grateful you're here.
Yeah.
Seriously. I mean, it's like, you don't believe in God, man. Something was looking after you that night.
Yeah.
And just to think of all the lives you've impacted
Yeah.
today. And I mean, both of you guys, I mean, we're going to get to that. So how do we get from that moment to, because I want to get into the solution and I want to get into some of the hope. How do we get from that moment where you're standing on the tracks, ready to end your life,
Mm-hmm.
and your dad seeing you walk into that home, sending you to a psych ward, and the whole, I assume, family unraveling around your behavior, to, I guess, your first time in treatment, and then we meet. So how do you get to Karen? How do you get to treatment?
You want me to answer, or you want to go?
Well, I'll say this.
I'd like to hear your dad's perspective, because, like,
It's different.
at some point there's a shift, and it's probably not here, but...
So we didn't know. Like, my first instinct was, this kid has to be locked, chained to a bed, locked in the house, and he can never leave.
Had you Googled? Had you like as a smart guy? That's what I'm trying to, like, as a dad and someone who's intelligent and someone who has
Dude,
high
there's
achievers.
Nothing on Google. Google's shit.
Well, I mean,
The
what do you?
SAMHSA is shit. There's no resources.
Yeah.
It's awful out there.
It's an impossible
for
job
parents.
being a parent.
It's terrible.
Yeah.
So, which is one of the reasons why I'm doing what I do, what I'm doing.
Yeah.
You know, trying to help families and build resources for people. But it was terrible. My head was spinning. We got really lucky because we knew senior people at Northwell. The head of adolescent psychiatry had just done a 2-year stint in addiction at their flagship outpatient treatment center. And I got to talk to him directly about Stevie. Mm-hmm. And he's like, look, if you send him away, it may not take, because he's not ready for, you know, that kind of treatment. You're going to pull him out of school. You're going to, you know, it's going to disrupt in a huge way his life, and he's just not ready. So he's not going to get anything out of it. What I recommend is you go to their outpatient clinic, which was one of the few outpatient clinics anywhere that also had psychiatric services. They had a psychiatrist on staff in 2014, along with the addiction professionals. And he said, look, if that level of care doesn't work, you go to a higher level of care. And it turns out, he was exactly right. When we told this guy that he was going to any kind of treatment, let alone intensive outpatient, I mean, he just gotten out of Zucker Hillside psychiatric unit. He was furious. And that was the beginning of the fighting, like the confrontations, him like lashing out and, just massive confrontations and battles with us about his lack of freedoms, he doesn't need any help, he's good, all of those things.
This is the end of junior year.
Yeah, junior year,
April
and
of
all
junior
senior year, pretty much.
And when does you? I just have this story is too good not to mention it. When does your dad put you in the car and drive you by the community college? Like when was his best parenting? Was he puts you in a car, he puts you in a car, drives you by a community college, and basically says like, "This is your future." If
That's
you keep
probably why
fucking
all
up."
this shit happened. It was before it all happened.
Oh, the trauma.
Before-
It was probably
that
the
was
trigger.
before all of it.
It was the trigger.
Before I took a drink, I was 12.
No, you were 14. You was 8th grade.
13.
Yep.
A report card comes back. We'll call it an 88 or a 90 overall GPA. And I get a text from my dad. And I had the NV2 back then where it's like, when you get a text message that's long, it's 1 of 7, right? Like, you got to go to the next message. And it was long. And he said, "Where are you?" I said, "I'm in town." He said, "I'm coming to pick you up." And he drove me to Nassau Community College. And we went on a college tour. And I walked around this community college at that point, was like, nobody goes there from my town, right? Everybody's going to 4-year universities. All my siblings are going to Ivy League schools or really competitive liberal arts schools. And we get back in the car, and what he said basically was, if you keep this up, this is where you're going. And this is the only place I'll send you. Mm-hmm. And I think it was the moment that I decided to basically give up. I still hadn't drank, right? I mean, like, here I am as this kid with a ton of potential, whether it's in the classroom or on the sports field. And, like, that was the moment where I decided, like, I'd rather not even try and do it my way and be the kid who doesn't give a shit than try my absolute hardest and not measure up to other people. And it's just fear. That's all it was. And I think for him, like, what he was trying to do is have that inspirational moment of, like, now I'm going to work harder than everybody. I'm going to prove you wrong.
Which would work with some kids. I mean, like...
Yeah, I fucked up. Okay? I mean, looking back, right? Not knowing the kid
But this
well
isn't
enough.
to make you feel bad. Like, this is to show other dads.
I get it. But I get it. But, I apologize to Stevie about that because it wasn't my best, like I thought it was. Like I thought it was a brilliant idea because, motivate him, put a little fear in him, that he needs to work harder in school. But, looking back, he was maybe not in the best place in 8th grade. And I added fuel to the fire and I regret it.
Yeah.
And I don't regret a lot of things about being a parent. I regret the hard-ass moments that were not nuanced about what was going on with my kids.
Yeah.
For sure.
So I'm assuming that you go to outpatient and it blows. Like what?
Yeah, I mean, it was March of 2014 to February of 2015.
You do a year of outpatient?
A year of outpatient.
God.
Drinking through it at various different points. And basically what I'm doing is sitting in these groups and sitting in individual therapy and negotiating the whole time of saying, I'm not like these other kids. I have my shit together. I'm an athlete. I'm in honors courses. I have friends. Like, I don't belong here.
And this thing was kicking your ass. I mean, you're getting your ass kicked.
I was getting my ass. Yeah, the scoreboard was like 100 to nothing. But I just couldn't see it that way, right? And so, like, here I am negotiating and making promises. And what basically happened was for a full calendar year, I made promise after promise. and ended up not fulfilling them, right? And so like it eventually came to a point where in the fall I had started drinking again. There was another incident with cops called into the house where I got, I mean, I don't know how you would describe it, like violent. And
That's a good description.
yeah, I was drinking in school and I was drinking and driving because those were the two places that nobody really checked if I was drinking, right? So like it's my senior year and I'm
The
drinking.
car in the high school hallways.
Yeah, I'm drinking at 9 a.m. Like I'm leaving campus in second period, going to buy Four Locos or Flasks and drinking.
Yeah.
And so basically, in October of my senior year, my parents sit me down. They're basically like, "You're going to treatment. Like we've had enough. Like this is yet another incident where the cops are in our house. You've been to the hospital 3 times. Like it's just, if they tell you that you're going to treatment, you're going, and we're gonna agree with them." And they decided not to send me. They felt like that was a moment where like I might start to change my behavior, and my behavior did change for the first time because I was scared to death of getting sent away and being pulled out of school and away from my friends. And what they did, which was really amazing, was they said, you have to go to Alcoholics Anonymous. Mm-hmm. And so I started being around these people who wanted to be there. I was no longer with the adolescents where nobody wanted to be there. I was with adults and people who had really turned their lives around. And so like...
So that's your first time seeing recovery alive.
Yes.
Yeah.
First time seeing recovery. And I don't drink for 3 months, my senior year of high school. And it's hard to like really gauge what I was thinking back then, but all of that was centered around the fact that I had a senior class trip coming up in February of my senior year, and I wanted to make it to that moment. I didn't want to get sent away before that. It was a class I had taken for 4 years for this trip to Italy. And so February 14th, I think, is the day we left to go to Italy. I show up, we get to Pompeii. No supervision, teacher's like 75 years old. I go, I buy. The one tip the older kids told us who had been on the trip before us was when you first get there, buy enough alcohol for 2 days because you're not going to be able to get any on the second day. So I bought the biggest thing of Jack Daniels that I could find, and I drank the whole thing in one night. And so when you're in AA, you're in outpatient, you're negotiating for a year about why you're different and why you don't have a problem. And then you wake up in an Italian hospital with no idea how you got there. You've urinated all over yourself. You're not wearing any clothes. There's nobody in the room. You don't know where your class is. And the only thing you hear is 2 doctors speaking a language that you don't understand outside of the room. For me, that was the first time that word powerless and unmanageable popped into my head. And I made, I asked for help, and I said, all the things that you guys told me are true. It no longer was it my family, no longer was it the ex-girlfriend, the friends, the siblings, any of that. Anxiety, depression, like my excuses had run out. And finally, I was willing to take a look at my own behavior.
And the seeds, I mean, I think it's important to note it, like, the seeds had been somewhat planted. Like,
11
if you
months.
wake up in that situation, and like, cheers to outpatient, cheers to you guys hanging in there, because if you don't know a little bit about what you're dealing with, you probably wake up and say it was just a bad night.
Yep.
Yeah, no 17-year-old says powerless
Right.
without doing a shitload of great work.
Yeah. So you get on a plane home.
Yeah, I got kicked off the trip.
Shocker.
With a couple other people. Shout out to them. And I basically got home. I had asked for help in Italy. I land in New York. I do one last, let me try and figure it out through outpatient again. They say there's no chance. And that night, they're driving me to Wernersville, Pennsylvania.
To go to Karen.
Yep.
Which is where I went to treatment, which is where you went to treatment.
Yep.
Me and Steve both serve on the board now, the New York Advisory Board. So it's a common bond in this crew here, and this is where it fucking gets exciting, man.
Yeah.
Because your journey starts, and I'm just so curious about. So you're in inpatient treatment. What the hell are you thinking? Like, what are you like?
Well,
are you still working? Are you still?
So I'm still working. Yeah, I'm still working. And, He went through a process. We went through a process. And the process.
I guess I want to start the
Yeah.
question by saying, like, at this moment,
Yeah.
as a parent, because
Which
this is,
moment?
like,
The
like
moment?
when he's in treatment,
Yeah.
especially for the dads,
Yeah.
because the dads are the fucking biggest pain in the ass for us in this work.
Yeah.
They never change like you change. They want to write the
Yeah.
check, or they want to give him the insurance and then say, fix my son.
Yeah.
Your story is fucking incredible. So at what moment do you say, I'm going to do the work along with my son?
It was never a question whether I was going to do the work or not. So, we were required to go to multifamily meetings. We were required to, which was with the kids, and also go to parent support group meetings. I thought it was odd, like, what the hell, But I struggled because, as you know, and Stevie knows, when you guys want what you want, there's no rules. And so Stevie targeted me because I was pretty soft. His mother was chain him to a bed. I was, let's keep the dialogue open, let's not be so hostile, let's work with the situation. And Stevie took it and ran with it. So he would do anything to get me off the trail. Like you would say, you know this, right? You'd say stuff to me like, you're the reason why I'm depressed. If it wasn't for you, I'd be fine. Or he'd tell me that I was the worst parent in the world. And so all of those things, like when I told him you're going to outpatient, he goes, that's why I'm depressed, because you are doing things that are crushing me. I would be fine. Leave me alone and everything will be fine.
When he said that, would you feel those things? Like,
Oh my God.
Yeah.
It was brutal because I wanted to have a relationship with my kid. I love my kid. And he's now telling me I'm the worst parent in the world. And then, the other
You're questioning yourself, who you are, your parent.
and then, look, you guys, he's very, very persuasive. But now when you add the ability to lie with impunity, that's so powerful. Like, I tell this story because it's just so poignant to me, is we were in the kitchen. It was just the three of us. It was my wife and Stevie. And my wife sniffed it out like immediately. You've been drinking. And he's like, no, I haven't. And so I just inquired, like, just innocently, Stevie, were you drinking? He turns to me with this vicious stare and goes, I can't believe my own father doesn't believe me when I'm staring you straight in the eye and telling you I did not drink. And I'm like, okay. He was totally drunk. So,
I get it.
Yeah,
I've been there.
You've been there, right? So I was such an easy mark for all of these tactics. And then, he realized quickly that my wife was here, I was here, we weren't on the same page. We were both like, felt like we were saving his life, even though neither one of us were. And he drove a truck through it. So it was a big learning curve for me for the first 6 months, to where I finally, for the first time, stood up to
6
him.
months from treatment, or
For when he got into outpatient,
you started to do the work?
I was doing the work, and the first time that I confronted Stevie and said, if you drink again, you're going away, was 6 months, to where I had the strength and the knowledge and, the support to actually stand up to this 17-year-old kid. Like, are you kidding me? Like, at Morgan Stanley, I was a badass running huge global businesses. Like, I stood up to everybody, right? Nobody pushed me around. Here, this 17-year-old kid that I loved, it was my son, and I would do anything to support him, was pushing me around to get what he wanted. And it took a lot of learning to get there and to basically confront him. And when I confronted him after that blowout, when we called the cops, and he was like saying, come on, hit me. He wanted to fight. I'm like, call 911. I'm not doing this. 2 days
Fucking
later.
Scary though. It's scary.
Oh no, it was scary as shit. Like that night, my wife and daughter are crying and screaming at me, do something. And I'm like, what am I going to do? He's out of control. He's blackout drunk. I don't know what the fuck to do. Call 911. We call 911. 2 days later, I confront him. And I said, look, we're going to our meeting. If the recommendation is residential, you're going. I don't give a shit that it's senior fall, you're the captain of the soccer team. I don't care. If that's the right answer, you're going. And he looks at me and goes, if you do that, you will no longer be my father. You will have 4 kids and not 5. And it was an unbelievable moment because for the first time, it didn't hit me. I had this like warmth that went through my body. And I stood on the shoulders of the clinicians and the experienced parents. And I looked at Stevie and I said, I don't think I've ever been more of a parent than I'm being at this exact moment. If the recommendation is residential, you are fucking going. And then we went to our meeting.
Wow.
And look, it sounds like a lot of bravado. When we got in the car, it was the hardest thing I ever done. I was scared shitless.
Yeah, you're
He's going to
crying.
run away. Is he going to get drunk? He's going to hurt himself. Like, what's going to happen? Like, that was throwing down the gauntlet. And, and standing my ground for the first time. And when we got back, there was a note on the side door. I turned to my wife and I said, damn, he ran away. There's the runaway note. We walk up to the note, and it was just the opposite. He's like, you're right, dear mom and dad, you're right. I have a problem. I'll go to AA. I'll see my counselor. I'll read the big book. I'll get a sponsor. And so we brought that to the clinicians, and we all kind of talked about it for like 4 days, and they're like, give him a chance. That's a big-ass concession, which you talked about. He went to AA.
That's huge. I mean, like, one, the fact that you're doing the work is huge. 2, the fact that these clinicians were able to say, give him a chance. Because probably all he wanted was to feel.
It was the person who really pushed that was Audrey.
Audrey Freshman, yeah.
And she said to us, look, if you send him now and he doesn't graduate high school and he gets off track, that's a reason why people get depressed. Because all of a sudden they're graduating a year later, et cetera. So as long as he's safe, the longer you can keep him on track and doing the things he needs to do, that's the right strategy. And it seemed right to me, and it was totally right. Because, he went away, the second half of the second year, already applied to college. There was all sorts of good things that happened. And she was dead right about it.
Yeah.
And, I kind of, every year of his anniversary, I send her a text. You were the architect of his recovery, big hearts, thank you. Because it wasn't clear, but she made the call, and it was a great call.
So you go to Karen, fast forward. First of all, Steve, I mean, this conversation is so good, and I hope you're appreciating what he has to say. I mean, like, I hope there's, like, a general appreciation here, and I really hope that people, specifically fathers, but families, listen to this, because the chaos that you're explaining is chaos that we hear about every day in our work here at Release. I mean, it's just we hear about the chaos, and I know, and Steve knows, Stevie D knows, how fucking good we are with our words. And we will make you believe that we are literally going to kill ourselves just to put one more drink in us, And that's like, it's fear, man. We're just instilling fear in you. So
I will tell you one more thing.
Yeah, go.
The darkest time was the summer when we got sort of counseled to create contracts on behaviors. Mm-hmm. So we wrote like six things that he couldn't do with 5 sub things on each of the 6 things. So it was a contract with 30 things that he had to do. And of course he signs the thing. And then he proceeds to find a way around all 30. And it was literally when I said to him, I'm like, dude, did you go to Harvard, law school? Like, you're finding every gray area, every way around everything that we've written here. And it was just massive, massive confrontation. And so the thing that we learned after all of that was the 29 of them are bullshit. The only one that really mattered was not using. Mm-hmm. Because that was the key and the thing that would open up his entire life. If he stopped using, everything else was possible.
Yeah.
And we didn't have to try to manage, getting up, making his bed, going to school on
doesn't
time,
work. It doesn't work.
Taking out the garbage. Like, all that crap didn't matter. And what really mattered was getting to a place where he wanted to get sober. Period. That was it.
So you're in Karen. Mm-hmm. You finally, like this, the party in Italy.
Yep.
Blackout in Italy. I have questions about why Jack Daniels and not like some good Italian liquor, but we'll get there at a later date. So you end up in Karen. You're there for 30 days. And then at some point, so I'm running another program at this time, and we get a call from you or dad, and it's like, there's this 17-year-old kid. Do you take 17-year-olds? Like, you know, kind of like going through the process. And then, you know, we get on the phone with dad, and you show up in this program that I was helping run back in the day. And
Yep. You were the guy I spoke to when I was a Karen.
I mean, like, this is 2015. Crazy.
Yeah.
And so you show up there and you're in sober living with us, and your dad, at some point in a conversation, or we were reviewing cases at one point, there's this thing where Steve's dad is going to like leave his job and like totally throw him. It's like, at what point? So you show up in the city, you're going to AA, you're kind of like, you're staying, so like, what's that?
I'm a senior in high school, finishing out school through like tutoring, and I'm going to AA meetings. I'm in intensive outpatient again. I'm living in a sober living. And I did that from, I would say, like mid-March until the end of June. And that was like my first experience of treatment. And that was after 28 days of Karen. And I was like super gung-ho about it. Like wanted to be there, wanted to live a big life, wanted to be sober. Like I had been through the ringer enough to be beaten into a state of reasonableness. And I was like doing it.
Yeah.
Which was great. I go home for the summer, work construction job, continue to do AA meetings every single day, and then go to college in the fall. Fordham University, yeah.
And so he's kind of on his journey. He's finally got like, there's maybe like a little bit more sleep at the house. Like you're a little bit comforted that he's finding his way. When do you leave the job at Morgan Stanley and decide that you're gonna?
So, yeah, all of that was amazing. All the work he did was incredible. September. So we had agreed that he wasn't going to live on campus. And we called the school and said, look, he's going to commute. And they screw up and they assign him a dorm and roommates. So we don't know this. So he comes to us like 2 weeks before school with this.
Did they screw up or did you work an angle?
No, they screwed up.
They screwed up, and
But
he
the
comes
door
to
was
us.
open.
He comes to us with a sales pitch, and he said, "Here's what I'm thinking." Do you remember this?
Yeah, I remember.
We're sitting outside in the backyard. He goes, "So if what we're talking about is my mental health and staying sober, I think
Weaponizing his sobriety.
Oh,
and that's the other side of this
Oh.
thing. Like you weaponize the
No, but
suicide.
this was so good.
Yeah.
So he says, I think that I have just as big a chance of getting depressed and using if I'm sitting home in the basement with no friends commuting to school in the Bronx as I do being in a party environment with the right supports. And I think, that I should be given a chance for, big upside with big risk, because the other situation is just as risky. So, of course, we don't make the decision. We go and we talk to Audrey. We go and we talk to, counselors. And they're like, he's not wrong. He's got a lot of risk sitting in the basement, not experiencing the college experience, not making friends because it's hard to do as a commuter. Give him the shot. And so what we decide is he's got to have supports. He's got to have an AA meeting. He's got to have a psychologist, and we got to do testing. And of course, he doesn't do any of that.
No.
And he can tell what happens. But, which was, the big relapse. For me, and when I left Morgan Stanley, it was he has the big relapse at the exact same time that the head of capital markets at Morgan Stanley, who's now the CEO, Ted Pick, who I'm friends with, comes and sits down with me. He's now running all of capital markets, and he's like, we can do awesome things together. I want to put you in a big job, and that big job is like as big as it gets. And he said, but I need a 3-year commitment. And so it's Wall Street, and there's only one answer when someone says that to you. Fuck yeah, where do I start? Let's go. And so that's what I said. And then I went home, and I got this kid who's relapsing. But I also had a very strong sense that I had been given gifts in terms of my parents, my family, education. Morgan Stanley was a dream run. And there's a lot of people suffering. So maybe I shouldn't just spend my life making a lot of money for myself and Morgan Stanley. Maybe I can do some good. And so literally, it was a Thursday that Ted came to me during the weekend. I took out an Excel spreadsheet. I'm like, okay, here are my 4 options. Here are the things that matter to me. And no matter how I weighted all my options, the thing that won every single time was quitting and retiring.
Do you know this story?
Yeah.
And I retired. And the president of Morgan Stanley, a guy named Colin Kelleher, he's the chairman of UBS. Awesome guy. Really, I love the man. I told him, and he said, well, let's not set a date. And I go, dude, I know your strategy. Don't set a date, which means never. So we're going to set a date. And he goes, look, I need for you to help me write the strategic plan for the fixed income division because you're the only one who knows where the bodies are buried. And so you'll work with Ted. You'll work with the head of HR. Give me 4 months. And I said, so it was September when I told him, I said, fine. So right after New Year's, I retired.
And
I actually left. But I made the decision in September of 2015.
I mean, this fucking story is unbelievable because your son is like newly sober. Mm-hmm. You pull out this Excel spreadsheet. You've worked for 30 years, assuming like for this opportunity, right? Like you want it like for this moment where you're kind. I mean, like in some degree, to some degree.
Well,
or most people.
I mean, to be honest, like that is true for almost everyone, but for me, I cared about other stuff.
Okay.
I did, like I mentored probably 200 people at Morgan Stanley. Like I cared about other stuff besides, the big title, the big paycheck, and all of those things. And so even though I was type A, doing my job, and my mom said to me, his grandmother said, I thought you'd work there till you're 80. That was kind of the persona. The truth was that it wasn't crazy that I wanted to take my shot at doing something different and trying to help people.
And Stevie's behavior and like his grit and resilience probably helped impact that decision, right? Like you saw him doing some work, and I mean, it sounds like maybe this big relapse. I mean, like I personally hate the word relapse because I feel like it keeps people drunk, like in our work. But this moment happens, and your dad's kind of like what?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sober 6-7 months. There's a system in place that works, which was using supports, having friends in recovery, getting to meetings, therapy, all that.
Yeah.
And I get to campus and I stop doing it all,
Yeah.
right? And so I drink from probably, let's call it September 1st to September 28th. And I basically wake up on a Monday morning. I was drinking on a Sunday night.
Yeah.
And so like late in the hours, I wake up on a Monday morning. I'm sitting in class at 10:15. Hardly the worst night of drinking in my career, right? Like made it to class, went to bed at a reasonable
We have
time.
evidence of that.
Yeah, plenty of evidence. And I'm just sitting there and I just have a knot in my stomach of like, this isn't who I am anymore,
awesome.
And this isn't how I want to live my life. And I basically like have a decision as to like, do I want to lie and be a closeted alcoholic for the rest of my life? Or do I want to just go back to what works and what really made me feel good about myself?
Awesome.
And I left that class. I went to therapy later that afternoon for the first time. And I just got honest with one other person about what I was struggling with and why I started drinking again. And he kind of just looked at me and said, like, it's okay. Like, you know what works. Go do what works.
So was the sober date September 28th?
September 29th, 2015. Because I drank till like 2 in the morning.
It's fine,
so.
dude. That's
Yeah.
And that's just like the stories of recovery that we tell. They never get old. And to think of all those watershed moments that we just heard about, and like it was a Monday morning sitting in class, like when you just knew, man.
Yeah.
And we can't, as providers, healthcare professionals, manufacture that. As parents, we can't manufacture it. Like it has to come from somewhere else, and the therapy and the meetings and the supports and all that stuff probably played into it. But like this is also where I think there's a spiritual nature to this process. Like something crawled inside of you, man, and you knew all you had to know.
I've never met anyone with my sobriety date, right? Like it was just the most mundane Tuesday morning in September, late in September. And it was just like, I had done enough work at that point that when I went back out, it's not what I wanted to be. And so I just went back to what worked, and yeah, I stayed sober since. It's been 8.5 years.
8.5 years, and now you are, I mean, I love you. Like I'm emotional sitting here talking to you because I just think about, you tell that story and I think about all the fucking people you've helped, you know, and like the work you're doing here with Release, and I mean, running our women's program, our men's program, like, you know, and like I always believe like the best player plays, you know, and you got this promotion at the beginning of the year, and the first thing that creeped in my mind is like, he's fucking young, man. He's young. And then like, it was just like, you know, you proved me right. You made me look good because you're killing it. And then we have your dad here who goes, you work at Shatterproof, you study under John Kelly. Like, give me a quick update, and then I'm going to do a little something here at the end, but give me a quick update on how you're spending your time and just like why you continue to be so passionate about helping other parents and sharing your story. And
Well, first of all, I'm beyond proud of Stevie. So let's just put it out there. Like, he's a hero to me. And I'm blessed, and I'm beyond words. So I just want to put that out there. The reason why I do what I'm doing, and I'll tell you what it is because it was so painful and so scary, and so we were so alone. It almost destroyed my marriage, my family. We almost lost Stevie, which would have been beyond catastrophic, and anybody who's had that happen, my heart goes out to them. I bleed for them. It's like the most brutal thing in the world.
yeah, people die.
So what I do now, I left Shatterproof like 1.5 years ago. It was a great experience. But what I do now is I work at Northwell as a volunteer, working with families.
So cool.
Yeah, so I work with parents of teenagers. And I really just, I'm not a professional, but I share what my experiences were, the things that I learned that worked, that I learned from professionals. I'm also working with parents of young adults now. And so that's been phenomenal. I've become an advisor to a number of people who run companies, because I have a lot of business experience. And also, which is a shocker to me, researchers. So I'm on a study now as a formal research person with Dartmouth Medical School and Johns Hopkins on how to teach craft to caregivers, parents and other caregivers.
That's community reinforcement and family training for those of you who are listening.
Yeah, it's a really powerful intervention, but it's designed to help people convince their loved one to accept treatment. And what we're going after are young adults with opioid addiction, which is the hardest people to get. And so that study has been, I've been on that now for 6 months. It's been phenomenal. They invited me to be an advisor. I'm an advisor to John Kelly with his new, at Harvard, he's at Harvard Medical School. He's got a new foundation on youth prevention, treatment, and recovery. And so I'm also, I brought him some research ideas, and he's about to do one of them, which I think is really cool. He's going to do a study on teenagers that got sober and do a systematic study on how it actually happened. What were the barriers? What were the things that worked? Because the field just doesn't know how people like Stevie got sober, right? And so, so that's pretty cool. And that's really how I'm spending. I have a website that's it's really powerful. We just crossed over 250,000 visitors. It's addictionlessons.com. And
we'll share that for sure.
Yeah, it's everything that I wished that I knew that I couldn't find on the internet about addiction as a parent of a kid that was suffering. What did I need to know? And so all the 8 years that I spent doing the fellowship at Shatterproof, time in these meetings with families that are suffering, I just put it all together. It's like a 30-minute read, and it's everything that people need to know to get started, to understand the problem they're dealing with. So those are the basic things that I'm doing. And, my answer to anybody who needs help is yes. Like, if you're doing something that's cool and I can help you from my experience, either in business or as a parent in the space, I'm in.
Are you cool with him doing the work? Like,
Yeah. Yeah. I've always been supportive of it, always been open about it. I mean, like when he wrote this blog, I mean, the blog's about me, right?
Yeah.
And my experience and what it was like to see me go through that. And like, he basically wrote 3 different versions, which was, one of them was completely anonymous. One of them like had a little bit more detail in it. And then, what I said to him in that moment was one of them was the truth. And that's the one that's up there on addictionlessons.com.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's what's important to me. And if he's had a lot of success reaching a lot of different people and being helpful in that way. So if my story gets him there, then I'm in for it.
yeah. I wanna do something to close this, but for 3 guys to sit here and have this conversation and be so vulnerable and share in a way that just feels authentic and real to who we are is so cool to me. Like, I appreciate both of you guys doing this. I thought about my dad countless times through this episode, because my experience with my father was very similar, and like, the thing about my dad is he never gave up, and you never gave up. And the thing about me is I never gave up, and you never gave up, and we lived to tell the stories, and hopefully those stories will go on and help some people. But what I've really been thinking about when I'm talking to you guys is like this moment in time and how powerful it is that you're sitting next to each other, and we're going to go to this gala tonight and be in the same room. And something you said to me yesterday, Stevie D, was like, and this is his experience. I don't know if this is your experience, but he said, me and my dad, we don't talk about my recovery so much. Like, you shared that with me.
Yeah.
I hope you don't mind me sharing that here. And you kind of said, like, I think he knows that I'm good because I am, and you are. And there's a respect there, and I think for me, I just want to, you just said a lot of nice things about Stevie, and I'd like for you to actually tell him those things, like Daddy's a hero. And if there's anything that you guys want to tell each other now to kind of close this episode, just because I think it's valuable, like this moment in time right now where you're sitting next to each other, like good, bad, and different, like if there's anything.
Yeah, I think what I was saying is like, it's interesting when we do these types of things because we're talking about our experiences, we're talking about recovery, we're talking about you volunteer full time.
Yeah, tell him, don't talk to me.
And I work in addiction recovery, and it's like, but behind the scenes, like that's not who we are to each other. It's like, you're my dad and I'm your son, and we go golf and we talk about the Mets, and it's like, all of that damage that was done between 2010 to 2015 has been repaired in a really meaningful way. And I think it's a testament to the work that I did. I think it's a testament to the work that you did, and I'm really, really grateful for you. And you saved my life in a lot of different ways.
I never looked at it as damage. Stevie. I know you think about it that way. I view it as you were very sick, and it wasn't you. Yeah. It was a disease that was talking to me in those ways, and I just couldn't be more proud. And you know that because I've told you that I think that your journey is so spectacular, and what you're doing to help other people is so beautiful, that I couldn't be more proud of you and what you've done and who you've become.
Thank you.
I need a fucking Four Loko or something. Like, that was, joke. That was fucking awesome. You guys, I'm grateful to have been a witness to that conversation and just the journey. And I really fucking hope people listen to this because it's powerful. And it's a story of a father and a son who, by doing their own work came together and are helping so many people in this country. So I appreciate both of you. I'm sure we'll have you back at some point because there's a lot more to kind of unpack and talk about. And I want to you know, stay up to date with all the work that you're doing, obviously, and you know, we get to do it together. So
Yep.
that's all for today's episode, and yeah, love you guys. Thanks for coming.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Zach. Yeah, thank you.